Talk about a crusher. Yes! Oh!
Are you kidding me?
And gone!
Welcome back to the Schoolyard Sports podcast. On this podcast, Lane Frank, we're now in episode 200, everybody. Yes, we're 200 episodes through of the Schoolyard Sports podcast. We've got an action-packed episode number 200. We've got Michigan basketball coach Dusty May joining the show, talk some college hoops. We have our Super Bowl set. We have our Australian Open winner, Yannick Sinner. We have so much more to discuss in this action-packed milestone episode 200. Stay tuned. Now, for the 200th time, let's start off an episode with our headlines in the NBA. Jimmy Butler is officially done as a Miami Heat. He may still be on the roster, he may still be on the team, but he's not a member of this team anymore, everybody. He may be on their official roster, like I said, but he has no involvement with this team. They're done with him more than he's done with them. I think Jimmy Butler, if given the right opportunity, he would come back. If he comes to his senses in about a week or two, because Jimmy's a very unpredictable guy, he'd want to go back. I think Miami's at the point where they're saying, no, this is not a clown show we're running here. We're running an NBA championship-winning organization. Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley, they're not going to put up with this. So Jimmy Butler and Miami are done, in my opinion. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he had 52 points the other night, but the Thunder lost, and it was his second 50-point game of the week. But the Thunder lost. It's an important thing right there. This Thunder team was the 1 seed in the Western Conference last year, and they unfortunately lost to the Dallas Mavericks. Wasn't a good series for them. I think they got a bad matchup, and they couldn't get it done. And they wanted to run it back again this year. But Chet Holmgren's hurt. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's taken a great role this year. He's played like an MVP. But the team's not winning. So what needs to change? What does Mark Daiglenut, head coach, need to do? So for SGA and a few other guys on this team, something to think about. But SGA playing like an MVP once again. Played like one last year, didn't get it. Playing like one again this year. LaMelo Ball, averaging 28 points per game, averaging about 10 rebounds per game, and close to 10 assists per game, is not an all-star. Okay, maybe he's not an all-star starter, but to not be an all-star reserve? It's blasphemy. That's insane in my opinion. You could say, well, he's not even played that many games. He hasn't played even 40 games yet. I don't care. He's averaging 28 points per game, and he's playing like one of the best players in the world right now. It's a bit ridiculous to me. Victor Wembanyama, who's for the Western Conference, who's had a good year. He hasn't had an all-star year. If his name was, say, let's go with Jakob Poeltl, is he an all-star right now with these stats? Probably not. But it's Victor Wembanyama. The NBA wants their stars to be an all-star. Victor Wembanyama is an all-star this year. No discredit to him. But for LaMelo Ball to not be an all-star, ridiculous, in my opinion. Just outright insane. Last thing in the NBA, Adam Silver brought up the idea today of shortening NBA quarters from 12 minutes to 10 minutes. I'd like that idea. I think the scoring would go down. I even think the engagement would go up a little bit. If you went to a 40-minute game like college basketball, love that idea. Leave your thoughts on that in the comments. The NBA might be switching to 10-minute quarters coming very soon, everybody. Let's switch things over to the NFL. We have a lot of news. Cowboys hired head coach Brian Schottenheimer this week. A little bit interesting of a hire. His dad, Marty Schottenheimer, was the head coach for years in the NFL Hall of Famer. He was a great coach, championship-winning head coach. His son, well, he hasn't done much as an offense coordinator. He's been the offense coordinator for the Seahawks. They were bad. He's been the offense coordinator for the Jaguars. They were worse. He's been offense coordinator for the Cowboys. They were the worst. Now, what's he going to do as head coach of the Cowboys? You're going to have to see my thoughts on that in the Spotlight this week, which is on him. But Jerry Jones knows what he's doing. This is a good hire. You'll see why later on in the episode. Cowboys found their next head coach after firing Mike McCarthy after his tenure 2020-2025. They've got a new man in Dallas, everybody. The Super Bowl is set. We've got the Eagles versus the Chiefs. Rematch of the Super Bowl from 2 years ago. It's going to be a great game. Can't wait for it. Will Patrick Mahomes three-peat? Will Saquon Barkley and the Eagles get their first ring of the Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, Nick Sirianni era? We're going to pick it next week. Super Bowl matchup set after both teams had great conference championship games. Eagles, high-scoring battle against the Commanders. And for the Chiefs, what a great game it was. Beating the Bills again. Fortunately for Josh Allen, he couldn't get it done, everybody. Once again, Josh Allen loses to Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. What is it, the fourth or fifth time that's happened? Happened in 2020, happened in 2022, 2023, 2024, and now 2025. Very tough for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Last thing in the NFL, Pete Carroll is going to be a head coach once again, this time with the Las Vegas Raiders. It's a match made in heaven. The Raiders need a coach who knows a lot about football. The last few head coaches, they may have known a lot about football. Antonio Pierce, he may know a lot about football. He didn't know how to run a football team fully well. Pete Carroll, he's a Super Bowl winning head coach. Now, John Gruden is John Gruden. That guy's going to know how to coach football. Maybe he'll do it with a bit of controversies. Pete Carroll has never really had controversies in his career, unless you want to consider throwing the ball at the 1 yard line in the Super Bowl a controversy. But he's going to know how to put Mark Davis in his place. He's going to know what to do, and they're going to hire a good GM. Pete Carroll, he's ex-head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Switch things over to the MLB. Max Scherzer, 3-time Cy Young winner, head over to the Toronto Blue Jays, 1 year, $15.5 million. A little bit interesting to me because Max Scherzer, he's a guy who you can never see him playing in Toronto. You really couldn't. But it's his best offer. He wants to keep on playing baseball. Just shows me the market for Max Scherzer really wasn't that high. He's not a guy who wants to relocate his family from Texas to Toronto. I would assume Max Scherzer likes consistency, likes a good routine as a pitcher. This is his third team in 3 years. Rough stuff right there for Max Scherzer. He's going to be over to Toronto Blue Jays, 1 year, $15.5 million. Good deal for the Blue Jays. A little bit bad for the Rangers, losing a good pitcher. And for Scherzer, what's going on with his career? What happens after this year? What if he does well? Does he go somewhere else? Does he stay in Toronto? What if he does poorly? Is his career over? That's about for the news in the MLB. Coming up next, we've got an interview with Michigan head basketball coach Dusty May. Stay tuned. All right, Schoolyard Sports fans, let's continue this great episode 200 by bringing in Michigan basketball head coach Dusty May. May and the Wolverines are 15-5 on the year and 10-0 at home. Michigan's had a great start in Dusty May's first season. Coach, thanks for joining us. Now you're busy in season. We really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, Lane. It's great to be on.
It's great to be here to talk Michigan basketball with you. You know, I don't like to be biased in the show, but I will be with Michigan. Now, of course, Michigan has always been my favorite football and basketball team. You know, just love Michigan. So when I had the opportunity to have you on, you know, I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah, it's we're having a good year. There's a lot of ball still to be played, but it's anyway a little bit of a down year in football this year, coming off a national championship. But they've had a great winter recruiting so far, so we're excited for both the direction of both programs.
So the first thing I got for you is, you know, you had a great time at FAU. You made the Final Four. You had a few opportunities last offseason. You know, maybe you could have gone somewhere else. Maybe you could have stayed at FAU. Why go to the Big Ten? Why go to Michigan?
From the beginning, it would have taken a really special place to leave FAU. We built a program. We had a great culture. Obviously, living in South Florida, the quality of life is as good as it gets. We loved our players. So there were so many reasons to stay. But my wife and I, our youngest son was graduating high school, and it almost just felt like it was time for a new challenge or just a next chapter of our story. And so there were several jobs open that you know, we spoke to the universities about, but Michigan had a special place in our heart. Our youngest son, Eli, was born here 18 years ago when I was an assistant at Eastern Michigan. And so we always held this place in such a high regard. And, you know, it just, when you're looking at jobs now and the transient nature of college athletics, personally, I was looking for a place where I thought it would be difficult for the players to leave. If they were just regular students, a place that there's a strong connection to the alumni, a lot of pride in the university, and a place that had an upside as far as resources and growth potential. So Michigan checked all the boxes, what we were looking for, other than the polar vortex winters. But it's been great so far. I've met so many really interesting people, and the university community is second to none.
Michigan really is such a special place. So when you see a season like Michigan had last year where, you know, they didn't exactly have so much success. So you step in and you basically build this team from scratch. You bring in 11 new guys. You only keep 5 guys. What does it take in the new era of college basketball to basically build a team from scratch, which you did with this year team?
Well, it takes quick and decisive decisions. You have to find a way to do quick research, evaluate your prospective players, do as much homework as possible to see if they fit from a character standpoint. It really is speed dating. And if you waver at all, you're probably going to be out of a recruitment process. And so you have to know exactly what you're looking for, and you have to be very, very decisive in all your decisions. And fortunately for us, we started with a good foundation, which allowed us to be a little more patient down the stretch. We actually were trying to add one more player throughout the summer, but it happened quickly. I think once the dominoes started falling, it became contagious, and the guys we were getting were very attractive to play with. So the guys that came on board a little bit later all wanted to play the style that we play, and then also with the guys that we were signing.
As we're entering February, heading into March in a month, obviously the biggest month of college basketball, do you think the guys are starting to get a feel for playing with each other, trying to work things out? This is their first time playing with a team that has this much high level of offense, playing around these guys. You think they're starting to figure it out a little bit more as they go?
Yeah, we've been really up and down. I think earlier in the year our defense is a little bit ahead of our offense, and then our defense has taken a step back, and our offense has surpassed it. But we still think we have a big jump to make. It seems like we've had 2 or 3 guys play well on any given night. We really haven't had our top 5 to 8 guys clicking on any individual night or any individual game. So. They're still learning each other. The beautiful thing about the Big Ten is, as soon as you get good at something, they counter, and then you have to find new ways. And you almost have to reinvent yourself at times because of the different styles of play and how physical the league is. So we're learning on the fly. Obviously, this is new to me. It's new to most of our players. So there definitely is a style of play adjustment, a cultural adjustment playing in the Big Ten. But we're almost halfway through it now, and we feel much more prepared to attack the back end than we did the front end.
I think there's a lot of new things about this team. You start 2 7-footers, which I don't think has ever been done in college basketball before. Maybe not even the NBA, but how do you build a playbook for that when you're starting 2 7-footers, Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden? I know they have different play styles, but just to build a playbook around that, is that a coach's dream to have 2 7-footers on the court at the same time?
I think it's a coach's dream just to have versatile, really good players, and both of those guys are that. And I think our other pieces complement them as well. We don't have a lot of great individual playmaking. We have good players, but Danny is a playmaker in a 7-foot body. So he's checked a box that this team lacked. But yeah, there's a lot of possibilities. It's very challenging on one hand, and on the other, it's exciting and I guess just fresh because it's not something you can simply look at another team, what they've done and how it works. You kind of have to figure it out around your own personnel and how you think it fits because they are unique talents. But typically, I think any coach can figure out how to win with really good players if they have great attitudes and they work hard, and those guys do.
They definitely do. All right, Friday night, Purdue, Mackey Arena. It's a tough place to play. I don't think anybody in the country can really go in there on a Friday night and confidently say, we're going to win that game. Even though Purdue had a loss earlier in the week, it's still a team that made the national championship last year. It's a team that has a great fan base. The fans want to win every game, that they're going to sell out that arena on a Friday night. How do you get a team going after a tough loss like that, which, I think that was probably the biggest adversity this team's faced all year?
Yeah, we lose on a half court. We start out 6-0, and we lose on a half court buzzer beater to Minnesota, and it was disappointing because we just didn't play with the same edge that we had played with on the road up to that point, winning at Wisconsin, USC, UCLA, and then we come back home and we don't play exceptionally well at home again. And then Purdue, it was just one of those nights. They were obviously very cantankerous after the loss to Ohio State, where they were coming back from a West Coast trip. And we ran into a buzzsaw that night. They started the game with multiple turnovers and saw the ball go in the basket with some breakaway layups. And we were on our heels from the beginning. It's we're looking forward to playing Purdue back at our place next month. But they deserved to win. We played poorly. And, there's a lot of coaches that say there's a couple games a year that you're probably not going to win no matter what, just because of the way things fall. There's a couple you're probably not going to lose no matter what. And then everything else is kind of right where you are. And so it's kind of one of those nights where I don't think we would have beaten them more than a couple times out of 10 on that given night. But, that's basketball. Some nights the shots are going in. Some nights you just don't have it. And we certainly didn't have it that night.
I think the fact of the matter is you're playing in the Big Ten. There's great teams in the Big Ten. I think everybody in the Big Ten can say that. You're going to lose some games unless you're, the 96 Bulls. So Big Ten, obviously one of the toughest conferences to play in basketball.
It is. It takes great stamina to play as many games as we play with it being such a challenge every single night with the crowd environments, with the physicality of the league, with the travel. There are a lot of challenges, and the team that comes out on top is definitely going to have they're going to have the mental fortitude to last as long as our season is.
For sure. The Big Ten expand this year, and you're making travel from coast to coast. And it's new for everybody, maybe except you, because you were in Conference USA. You went from, Florida to somewhere like here in El Paso. You went from Florida to places all across the country when you were at FAU. What has that travel been like, going from Michigan to USC, from Michigan just all across the country? But you dealt with that at FAU. Have you kind of brought those experiences of, we did this thing when we went from Florida to another part of the country. Now we're going to do this when we go from Michigan to California?
Lane, even rewind further back, my first year in the WAC conference at Louisiana Tech.
That's a way back WAC.
It was a 16-team league, and they had already decided to disband. But the last year, I think there might have been 10 ranked teams in the top 25. There were at least 8. It's when Hawaii was in the league, and Boise State, and Utah State, and it was just an amazing football league at the time. Well, we got left in the league with Hawaii and all the West Coast schools. So we were doing those trips that were even further during the week without charter flights and without the travel that we have here. And so I find it difficult to complain when most of my career has been traveling on commercial flights versus charter flights, and in places much harder to get to than Los Angeles or New Jersey. And so it's, obviously it's tough for our players because they're in classes and they still have assignments and responsibilities. But otherwise, it's not as bad as we make it out to be, other than just a few trips. And, the home teams are obviously going to have a big advantage. But, I think everyone's going to have advantages and everyone's going to have disadvantages.
I think it's funny. Your Final Four year at FAU, you guys were coming into El Paso as a ranked team. I think it was your first game as a ranked team. It was like my birthday weekend. So I was like, let's go to the game. I'm always a Michigan basketball fan. I'll go to the UTEP games. Let's see how it goes. I see this guy warming up, and it ends up being Vlad Golden, who's now one of the best players in the Michigan team. Just funny how it all works out.
It does. And we lost the year prior to that at UTEP when Vlad coincidentally tipped it in himself. And so we had some good battles there. We typically played well. They were always a really defensive-oriented team with Coach Golden, and but even prior to that, Rodney Terry. So our team usually performed well there, and there's quite a distance from Boca Raton to El Paso. So just another example of what these college athletes have to go through, and how tough it is to do what they do.
The struggle of Conference USA travel can be a lot, but I think that conference, breeds a lot of great coaches, players. You got that Paul Millsap, Danny Manning, Rodney Terry, yourself. So it's just funny how those things work out.
No question. Even back with the minors, with Antonio Davis and Tim Hardaway and those guys, they had a lot of really good players.
For sure. College basketball, it's obviously changed a lot over the years, and recruiting has become one of the biggest things, not just in college basketball, but every single sport. And each coach has a different way of doing it. Deion Sanders of Colorado, he's never done in-home visit. He has to bring the guys to Boulder. What's your strategy for recruiting a guy? Are you good with those in-home visits, or do you really want those guys up there in Ann Arbor?
Yeah, our philosophy was always recruit through the high school ranks, and FAU, majority of our team outside of just a few guys. We actually had a good combination but we had a majority of high school players. And the unique thing about the home visits, it just gives you an opportunity to see where these guys come from, how they live their lives, what culture they come from, what are their family dynamics. So you just feel so much better about coaching people that on a real personal level. And obviously that's changed now. It's become much more transactional, and I don't say that in a negative way. I think majority of our lives involve transactions, and so it is what it is. But it's we just don't know the players and their families don't know each other's families. So it's unique. I'm adjusting to it, and even I've spoken with several of our players' parents from the FAU days. And they say the same thing at their new places. They don't know the other players' parents, and there's not the community and the family feel that you get when you really bring a group of people in and you grow together, and you pass down information, you pass down your cultural norms and your unwritten rules from old guys to young guys. So it's different. I don't think I'll enjoy it quite as much, but I love coaching basketball. It's never going to be perfect, and we have really, really good guys, so you just don't know them on the same personal level.
Sticking with recruiting, Trey McKinney, number 1 player in the state of Michigan, named a McDonald's All-American this week, and he's a Michigan signee. What does it mean to get the number one player in the state of Michigan who happens to be a 5-star McDonald's All-American in just your first year?
Well, everyone in Michigan says that the best players from Michigan go to Michigan. So in this case, that definitely held true. But Trey, being originally from Flint, I don't think Michigan's had a Flint player since Glenn Rice. And you have to be a basketball junkie to remember Glenn Rice back in high school and college. Obviously, everyone remembers him from his NBA days. But and so Michigan State's had kind of a stranglehold on that area of the state. And so with Trey, he goes to Orchard Lake St. Mary's and plays for a really strong basketball program and great coach. Plays with the family program out of Detroit, which there's been a lot of those guys that play at the University of Michigan. So, we identified him from the beginning and worked to develop a relationship with him, even though he was a year out. Obviously, when you come into a new job and you need 10, 11 new players or whatever the case, you have to prioritize the guys that are going to be on this year's team first. And so we really tried to make an effort to let him know that he was important to us despite putting majority of our focus on this year's team. And then the staff did a tremendous job. They worked incredibly hard to sell our vision to Trey and why this would be the best place for him. Unfortunately, he's got a great support system and family that he wanted to play in front of and be around. And he takes a lot of pride in Michigan. He's the definition of a Michigan man. He's very well-rounded. He's very intelligent. He cares about people, and he's an ultimate competitor on the basketball court. So I could go on and on about Trey, but he's very, very big for our program going forward, especially recruiting the state, where we think he could be one of those guys that the younger players follow.
And I think that says a lot to you and your staff, because the reality is Michigan hasn't been great at recruiting McDonald's All-Americans in the 21st century, but to get one your first year, definitely big.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, you're talking about there's, whatever 50 to 70 Power 5 Power 5 teams, and McDonald's All-Americans. There's 20 a year, and then when you factor in how many Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina, the Blue Bloods typically get, there's not a lot of McDonald's All-Americans just floating around. So usually geography helps, and relationships, whatnot. But we're very fortunate to get Trey. Hopefully this leads to many more McDonald's All-Americans and highly touted players. But most importantly, getting guys that fit us, the culture of our university and athletic department.
I know Wolverine Nation loves to hear that. Who's one coach you'd love to coach against, they've never had the opportunity to go up against?
Wow, there's so many great coaches, and when you're coaching in the Big Ten, we have an opportunity to go against some of the game's greats. Obviously, with Coach Hurley's recent success at UConn, you want to challenge yourself against the best, and the way they played the game, the way they competed. They had a special group, and they coached them as well as you could possibly coach a team. So that'd be fun to go against them. Obviously, Duke, with their reputation in college basketball, it would be fun to go against. And there's something in the works with some of these marquee games in the near future for the Wolverines.
I think a lot of people in Wolverine Nation would love to see a Wolverine Blue Devil matchup. That'd be classic right there.
Without a doubt.
So Michigan has a lot of great alumni in football, basketball, even in just the whole entire world. Have any reached out to you on how to handle being the head coach at such a big brand like Michigan?
I don't think they've reached out to specifically say how to handle because the job responsibilities, it's different every day. It's like being a parent. You're never really prepared for what all you have to do, but you try to do the best you can to put yourself in position to be prepared. But yeah, I've spoken with a lot of really famous alums, men and women that I grew up as fans of, and so I've been blown away at the support and how much people really care about Michigan basketball. Obviously, Michigan football is a world brand, a world renowned brand. But I'm actually been pleasantly surprised how important Michigan basketball is to our alums as well.
It means a lot to a lot of people, not just in the state, but Michigan's just such a big brand worldwide, in my opinion.
It is. When you put the Block M on, you're recognizable anywhere in the world, and that's the symbol. It means a lot to a lot of different people.
All right, Coach. Last one I got for you right here: Michigan State. Both great teams this year. February 21st in Chrysler Arena. What's the tone that Michigan needs to set? What impact does Wolverine Nation need to have?
Well, we're going to have to ramp up our physicality and our intensity level before that game, but it's going to be it'll be an absolute dogfight. You'll see two teams fighting tooth and nail. This is an unbelievable rivalry. I think it's one of the most underrated rivalries as far as basketball in the country. And we're excited to go in there and compete against a Spartan team that's playing as well as just about anyone in the country.
It's going to be a great game. I know everybody at Michigan's very excited for it. So, Coach, I want to thank you so much for hopping on this very special episode 200 with us, and good luck for the rest of the season, especially Saturday, especially, February 21st against those Michigan State Spartans.
All right, Lane, I appreciate you having me on. It's nice to meet you, and I'm here if you ever need anything.
Appreciate it, Coach. Go Blue.
All right, go Blue.
Now, in honor of this milestone episode, I wanted you guys, the listeners of Schoolyard Sports, the viewers of Schoolyard Sports, over these 200 episodes, to get to know me a little bit better. So here are the top 5 sporting events I've ever been to in my lifetime as a sports fan. Let's hop into it. More recent memory, though, you could say. Honorable mention, the 2018 Big Ten basketball tournament. Michigan, they didn't have many expectations. Yes, they were the reigning champions of the Big Ten basketball tournament, but they didn't exactly have a stellar regular season. They went on to win 4 games in 4 days. They were crowned Big Ten champions. It was a great run. Loved to be there. It was actually at Madison Square Garden. It was interesting because the Big Ten did their conference tournament 2 weeks before any other power conference because they wanted to do at Madison Square Garden. Then the team had a 2-week break from the Big Ten tournament to March Madness, and it worked out well for Michigan, making the national championship that year. So, 2018, Big Ten tournament at Madison Square Garden, Duncan Robinson, Mo Wagner with the German flags everywhere. They were putting everything up there in Madison Square Garden for the Michigan superstar and all the Michigan fans. It was just such a great tournament, especially that Michigan State game in the Big Ten tournament. So, honorable mention, 2018, Michigan basketball, Big Ten tournament, 2018. Next one, 2017 Rose Bowl between Georgia and Oklahoma. Now, this is controversial. I think this is a top 3 college football game of all time. So how could this not be my number 1 sporting event of all time? I may have left at halftime, everybody. I may have. Pasadena, I'm only 10 years old, a lot of traffic, while Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield they're wiping out Georgia at this point. It's 31-14 at halftime. I think I even left before Hot Rod made that kick to even make it 31-14. But Georgia was getting destroyed in that game. Goes on to be one of the best college football games ever. Sony Michel will send the dogs home to the championship game is always the call I'll remember watching on TV rather than being at the game in the Rose Bowl. Tough stuff right there, but still a good experience watching Baker Mayfield catch a touchdown from CeeDee Lamb in that 2017 Rose Bowl. My highlight from that game. I can say I always went to the greatest Rose Bowl of all time. Can't say I watched the ending, though. 2017 Rose Bowl, honorable mention. Next one, number 5, Michigan-Washington 2021. Now, Washington was unranked, Michigan was unranked, but I think it's special to me because it's the first real sporting event back from COVID. Nobody in the stadium is wearing a mask. It's 100,000 plus fans. It's the first time the Big House has been sold out, since 2019 because no fans in 2020. Michigan has a new era of college football. It's the first ever maze out. It was a really special game for Michigan, and it kickstarted their playoff run, kickstarted their dynasty, their 3-year dynasty. So I'll always love that game. 5, Michigan-Washington at home in the Big House, 2021. I'll never forget 56 carries in that game, only 35 passing yards from K. McNamara. Number 4, Mets-Phillies, Game 2, 2024 playoffs. It was an electric game. I'd never been to Philadelphia before, but I went to this game, and boy, were the Philly fans hostile. They were hostile because they wanted their team to win. But the Mets were cooking at first. You have a Francisco Lindor home run. You have a Pete Alonso home run. You have even a Mark Vientos home run. But then, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, they go back-to-back. They get the lead. The Phillies, they're riding high, everybody. Comes to the 9th inning, top of the 9th. The Mets are close down to their final out, and Mark Vientos steps up there and hits a huge home run. It was an awesome game, a very offensive-filled game. I think a lot of people enjoyed that game watching it on TV and in person. Mets went on to lose that game, though, so that's why it's at number 4. 4, Mets-Phillies, game number 2. Number 3, so when I went to in the year 2024, it was a great game, a March Madness game, a Sweet 16 game, Duke versus Houston. Now, for some reason, I'm sitting in the Houston section during this game. Now, I'm rooting for Duke. And I also got to see, Marquette versus North Carolina State before. A lot of North Carolina State fans, they wanted to play Duke the next game, so they hung around a little bit, blended in with the Houston crowd with that red. But it was in Texas. There were a lot of Houston fans there. Jamal Shedd, he was playing great. Cal Filipowski was playing horrible. Jerron Roberts, Javier Francis, they were balling out for Houston. Then Jamal Shedd gets hurt. Then Duke goes on a crazy run. Then Duke goes on to win that game, led by Jared McCain, Cal Filipowski. Vibes are at an all-time high in Dallas that night. Number 3, Duke Houston 2024 Sweet 16 that put Duke in that Elite Eight. Number 2, the Michigan National Championship 2024. The only reason it's not number 2 is, yes, it may be one of the happiest moments of my life, Michigan winning the national championship. Seeing the confetti come down, seeing just all your lifelong dreams come to fruition. But it wasn't really a great game. It was more of a stressful game because Michigan started the game great, 14-0. Then from after that, there wasn't that much offense. And then it was just worrying. Is Michael Penix going to throw a touchdown here? Could this game be tied at any moment? Then eventually Michigan gets the win. It wasn't really a dramatic ending. You could say the pick six was a bit dramatic, but I wouldn't say it was a completely dramatic ending to this game. A great game, though, and an awesome experience. Michigan winning the national championship versus Washington. So I have 2 Michigan-Washington games on this list, 2021 and the 2024 national championship at number 2. And number 1, the best sporting event I've ever been to. You guessed it, it's another Michigan game. Michigan-Ohio State 2023. When I tell you the big house was packed, it was packed. Not necessarily just Michigan fans, but it was packed. And it was the loudest I've ever seen it. 110,000 plus fans. College game days there. This is a blowout game for Michigan. They're wearing their big game blues. You're going against the Ohio State Buckeyes. You're both 11-0. You don't win this game, you don't go to the playoff. Now, if that game was this year, with these stakes, you would have made the playoff because it was expanded playoff. But in the 14 playoff, if you didn't win that game, you weren't in. It was a big moment for Michigan. There was no Jim Harbaugh. It was only Sharon Moore. You had an injury to Zach Zinner in the third quarter. Then Blake Corum breaks off a touchdown. The next play, it was a great moment. But the deciding moment that made this the number 1 game I've ever been to was the Rod Moore interception and rushing the field. What an experience that was. What a game that was for Michigan. Number 1, Michigan-Ohio State 2023. Those are the top 5 sporting events I've ever been to. So you guys get to know me a little bit more as the host of this show on episode number 200, the top 5 sporting events I've ever been to. Did you know, when I first started podcasting and making these episodes, making these shows, it was originally called The Lane Frank Show.
Welcome to the Lane Frank Show. Today we will be discussing the NBA, NFL, MLB, and many more things.
Until I met the best producers in the world, DB Podcast, and we rebranded to the great name of Schoolyard Sports. But did you know, I filmed 11 episodes with my iPhone in any garage I could find called The Lane Frank Show, everybody. That's about for Did You Know this week. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's do our spotlight on Brian Schottenheimer, Cowboys head coach, everybody. Now, if you told a Cowboys fan that before the year, they'd be like, who? Told me that before the year, I'd be like, who? You told me that 1 week ago? I'd say, who? But it's a great opportunity for Brian Schottenheimer, the former offense coordinator of the Cowboys, now the head coach of the Cowboys. It's a little bit interesting to me. Very interesting, because Kellen Moore is available. He's been a great offense coordinator for the Eagles, but he's not going to take that Cowboys job because they got their man. He'll probably be the Saints' next head coach, which is a great job for him. Why wouldn't the Cowboys want him? If he was a Cowboys quarterback, he was a Cowboys OC, they want to get rid of him? Some bad blood there between Jerry Jones and Kellen Moore. I don't know. But Brian Schottenheimer, it's a great decision because it's not a big name. You don't have to pay him a ton of money. He's not going to go 16-0. You don't have to worry about that. He's not going to go 9-7. You don't have to worry about that. He's not going to be a mid-level head coach. He's either going to be a great head coach where he'll be 14-3, and that's a very low chance of happening. I'd say about 15%. Or he'll go 0-17 for you. I think we're leaning towards that, everybody. About an 85% chance of him going 0-17 this season with this Cowboys roster, with him at the helm. No disrespect to him, but that's just the tough reality. They can fire him after this year. They can sit down with coaching candidates next year. They can say, okay, maybe we met with you last year and you didn't love our vision. Deion Sanders, you may have not loved our vision because we didn't have a clear plan. We had a mid-level roster that was going to have a good draft pick. We didn't have an awesome quarterback. Well, now we got this kid, Archer Manning. He's going to be a great quarterback for us. The third Manning in the NFL we're going to have as a quarterback. Well, call it fourth. The original Arch Manning, Archibald Manning, Peyton and Eli Manning's father, was a great quarterback for the Saints back in the day. But Arch Manning could be the Cowboys' next quarterback. This Cowboys team could have such a bad year next year. They could get the number 1 overall pick. They can fire Brian Schottenheimer, and they can get their guy, Arch Manning. Could be someone else, too. You get Drew Aller. You can get anybody with that number 1 overall pick. You can trade for a guy if you want with that number 1 overall pick. But Brian Schottenheimer, is he going to do a great job for you? And the players are going to love him. Is he going to win 14 games for you? Or he's going to do a horrible job, and none of it's going to blow up in your face because you're going to get your pick of the litter of head coaches and your pick of the litter for players to draft in the NFL draft. It's a great decision by Jerry Jones. It's a great decision by the Cowboys. They didn't rush their decision to hire a random head coach from a random team. They didn't want Liam Cohen. They didn't want Kellen Moore. They wanted their guy, Brian Schottenheimer, and they got him. That's about for the Spotlight this week. Now, college basketball madness, everybody. As we go into February, leading into March, the best month of college basketball, we got to talk some college basketball, everybody. Let's start off with Alabama and Mark Sears. Mark Sears is my player of the year pick, and he's kind of lived up to that hype. He's averaging about 20 points per game. He's having a great year for Alabama. But Nate Oates, Alabama head coach, he made a little decision on Saturday night. He said, I don't like this game against LSU. Matt McMahon's staff, they're doing a good job. They're picking out this Alabama Crimson Tide. What are we going to do? It's a rivalry game. I'm going to bench Mark Sears. Let's see how that works. Mark Sears didn't play 1 second in that second half. They said, we can deal without your scoring. LeBaron Phillin, Grant Nelson, they can get it done. Take a seat on the bench, Mark Sears. And I think that's interesting. To tell your best player to do that. A guy who might be coming off the bench now in Mark Sears. Really bold of Nate Oates to do that. But will we see Mark Sears in a lesser role coming up soon for the top-ranked or one of the top-ranked teams in the country? Alabama Crimson Tide. Really interesting to me to see that right there. I have Nate Oates to do that to Mark Sears, one of the best players in the country. But this is a great rivalry. We have the Iron Bowl, but basketball version, everybody. Bruce Pearl versus Nate Oates. And Bruce Pearl, Auburn Tigers are the number one team in the country. They're very consistent. They beat Tennessee on Saturday. Johnny Broome looks like a great player, one of the best players in the country, next to Cooper Flagg, a bunch of other guys. It's a great Auburn team. I just don't know how they stack up in March Madness, because Bruce Pearl's teams in March Madness haven't always done a great job. 2019, I understand. They made the Final Four in 2019 with Jared Harper, Isaiah Coro, a few other guys. Then they go in the tournament a few years later with Jabari Smith. They're a 2 seed. They lose in the round of 32. Then last year, you lose in the round of 64 after being SEC champions. So what can this Auburn team do this year, March Madness? That's what I've got my eye on, but I can't wait for that Iron Bowl matchup. Alabama versus Auburn. It's going to be a great game, everybody. Now, we got a new Big 12 rivalry, everybody. Houston versus Kansas. It was a great game in the Allen Fieldhouse on Saturday. Kelvin Simpson's squad beat the odds. They were down 6 with about 15 seconds left in overtime, and they tied it in overtime, went to double overtime, and got the win in double overtime, everybody. Kelvin Sampson in Houston, they're building something in the Big 12. Emmanuel Sharp, LJ Cryer, Jawan Roberts, Xavier Francis, they're just a great squad, in my opinion. But for Kansas, they were number one preseason team. Now they're struggling a little bit. AJ Storr probably regrets not going to the NBA. Hunter Dickinson probably regrets not going to the NBA about 5 years ago, because that's what he's in, his 5th year of college basketball. They were losing a few pieces on this team, Kansas. KJ Adams isn't having the year he wanted. Bill Self, though, and his guys, can they get things going? Can they turn us around? Can they still win the Big 12 title? We're just going to have to wait and see. For Michigan, we just talked about their head coach, Dusty May. They've obviously got some great games coming up, but they did lose the other night to Purdue, which was a tough game. But it's the Big Ten. You got to rally. This team's sitting at 15-5. We're just going to have to see how the rest of their season goes. For Duke and North Carolina, we've got that matchup this weekend in Cameron Indoor. North Carolina doesn't look like a tournament team, everybody. They're going to have their 10th loss of the season by February 1st, because they're definitely losing to that Duke team, which is a very solid team right now, number one team in the country. Duke team that can, give up some points. It's like in the North Carolina State game. They went down 20 to a very bad North Carolina State team. But it's an emotional game for John Shire. North Carolina State, they ended his season last year. It was a bit emotional for them, for North Carolina State to end their year. What was such a great year, which was, Jeremy Roach's last game as Duke Blue Devil, Jeremy McCain's last game as a Blue Devil, Cal Filipowski's last game as Duke Blue Devil. So that game was a bit emotional for them, but then they got through it. They won that game against NC State. They'll take on North Carolina Tar Heels in their next one Saturday, which I think they'll win. Bad luck for Hubert Davis. If he doesn't win this game, it's a must-win for Hubert Davis. If he doesn't win it, the clock's starting for Hubert Davis. I don't think he wins it, but if he does, it'd be big for him. But we're just going to have to wait and see, everybody. That's about for college basketball madness this week. All right, everybody. At the buzzer. And I think for, the first time in this show's history, I'm going to try to talk slow on this podcast, which, I don't think I've ever done in these 200 episodes. And it's crazy to think that we're at 200 episodes of what's been just such a great podcast, such a great show. I started this when I was 12.
Are you kidding me?
I'll be discussing all things in sports, which is NBA, NFL, MLB, college football, and college basketball.
I turned 17 last week. We take 4-week hiatuses in the summer. We don't take breaks outside of that. It's been such a great show to have 200 episodes since 2020. And we're in 2025 now. It's truly special, everybody. I think, I've really enjoyed what I do on this show, what I do on this podcast, what's brought me to, with doing great interviews. I mean, if you could have told me 5 years ago in 2025, you'll be interviewing the Michigan basketball head coach, I wouldn't believe it. I'd be over the moon, still over the moon, that I get to do these interviews today. Interview guys like Ray Lewis, Michael Phelps, John McEnroe, Jerry Rice. It's great opportunities that I've had through this show with these 200 episodes. We've gone through so many rebrands. We've gone through the Lane Frank Show to Schoolyard Sports. Then last year, we changed our logo, which I love. Getting away from, a little bit of I'm not so much a kid anymore. I went from 12 to 17, and it seemed super quick for the show, but I think I've evolved as a podcaster. I think I've really enjoyed, like I said, really enjoyed what I've done, and I think I've really realized that this is what I want to do in life. Be a podcaster, be on TV, build up my sports broadcasting record, in which I've done these 200 episodes, which has been a great library. Just really enjoyed everything. I always want to thank DB Podcast, the best podcast producers in the world. They've been with me for every single one of these 200 episodes. So for Jordan, Miles, Dez, everybody at DB, it's been such a great ride. For everybody being so supportive of me during these 200 episodes, even when we hit episode 100 2 years ago, that was just such a great accomplishment. That was 3 years ago, 2022, November 16th, 2022. I remember it still. This January 30th, 2025, and we're recording it, episode 200. I just love the future of this show, love the past of this show. So glad I get to do this every single week on Schoolyard Sports. It's such a great experience, everybody. And thank you to everybody who's ever listened, watched, viewing this right now. We really appreciate it, everybody here at Schoolyard Sports. And I love what I get to do here. So as your host, Lane Frank, signing off at the buzzer this week, my thank you for watching this show on episode 200. Now, question day. This week's question day is, what is your favorite episode of these 200 episodes? Now, I've been asked this question before, and I don't know if I have a real answer, everybody. It's really tough to put one episode out of these 200, but if I had to say one episode, that's my favorite, I would go with episode 152, everybody, when my Michigan Wolverines won the national championship. What an awesome experience that was, episode 152. Was there a specific interview, specific segment, episode that sticks out to you? Leave your answer in the comments. That's about for question day this week. That's about for Schoolyard Sports Lane Frank, episode 200. Thank you for tuning in. Follow Schoolyard Sports on Instagram at Schoolyard Sports. Follow Schoolyard Sports on X at Schoolyard Sport. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review for the best sports content in the world. Be back here next week, episode 201. Stay tuned.